All right, I was sitting here earlier, yesterday rather, and someone linked me a video. And after I finished watching this video, I became convinced that the person who was speaking was the greatest member of Congress of all time. And who is that person, you may ask? Well, we're gonna talk a little bit about him, but before I go into depth, I just want to warn you: when he speaks, you listen. So I've got this ruler here because I know some of these unruly children on this website are very tempted to go and say things. So with all that out of the way, we're going to start hearing Louie, the greatest congressman of all time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we had a vote today. Some would say it was very important, but actually it didn't do so much. In fact, it revoked some of our history, some of our precedent, some of our rules to take an unusual step toward supposed impeachment. I still continue to be of the opinion that we will not end up having a vote in this chamber on whether or not to actually impeach President Trump, because if that happens, it goes to the Senate. It gets slammed down in the Senate, both on the basis of massive failure of due process as well as no evidence, no direct evidence of any wrongdoing unless.
So I said the impeachment thing was a big hoax. And I know I said before I would stop speaking about it, but I'm making an exception for Louie. He's absolutely right. These evil Democrats are deciding that they want to not have a vote in the House so it doesn't go to the Senate, and then they get slam dunked on like they're playing against the Clippers or some other team. So he's correct. That's not the only thing he's correct on. We're gonna keep going through this. Prepare to be amazed.
We're talking about someone that is a Democrat and has held the second highest office before. But this is not due process. Oh, and by the way, of course, once it gets to the Senate, they vote it down. Then it assures a repeat of 96 where the current president is reelected, and I'm sure my friends across the aisle don't want to do that. So I still am of the opinion, I don't think we'll end up with a vote to actually impeach or not impeach President Trump. We'll see how that plays out. But it is worth looking at precedent. As an old history major, never has quit studying history. If we look at the impeachment committee authorizations in 1974 and 1998, back then, when there was bipartisan concern about due process, not just one side concerned, the authorization by the House directed the Judiciary Committee to investigate if there were sufficient grounds for impeachment. Currently, though, the Speaker had directed 6 different committees with House Intelligence at the forefront to continue their ongoing investigations as part of what was called an impeachment inquiry. Regarding the subpoena power in 1974 and 1998, what was authorized in the resolution back in the days when there was concern about due process and fairness and ensuring justice would be done, the resolution authorized both the chairman and the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee to issue subpoenas, acting jointly or unilaterally. Either the chairman or the ranking member declined to act, then the other had the right to refer the decision to full committee. Currently, under what we voted on today, it authorized the chair of intelligence, Chairman Schiff, and Judiciary Committee to issue subpoenas.
I think we should start a resolution to get rid of Schiff. Every time I hear that man's name, my stomach turns. How could he go after this president who's committed no crimes, who's been completely lawful while in office? I mean, it's so cruel.
But the authorization to the ranking members only is with the consent or approval of the chairman. It's incredible. I mean, basically, our friends have said, well, it's like a grand jury. Well, I have been a prosecutor in front of grand juries. I have been a judge who impaneled grand juries, answered their questions, and dealt with issues that arose over grand juries. I'm quite familiar with them. And with
you just heard his record, right? He's been a part of the grand jury. He knows all this stuff. So for anyone to accuse Louie of never knowing his facts when it comes to law, or not knowing at all, or in any instance, that's heresy. This man knows everything about the law. He knows it like the back of his hand. He flips a page of a law book. I already saw that. Been there, done that.
Grand jury, every single person on the grand jury who is going to get a vote gets to hear every witness, gets to ask any question they wish, and they could even send the prosecutor out of the grand jury if they wish. They're only there as an advisor. But what we've had not only was a sham impeachment inquiry, but they actually had armed guards outside of the sensitive compartmented information facility, a SCIF, had armed guards with guns to try to keep us out. People like me on Judiciary Committee, who is fully authorized under the current rules to sit in on any impeachment inquiry, participate, because the rules through precedent have made clear it's the Judiciary Committee.
They tried to keep this. I mean, this is ridiculous. This great man who was part of the committee, they tried to keep him out of there. It's outrageous. It makes you just want to have an impeachment inquiry in all the House Democrats, starting with Schiff. Shifty Schiff.
That does that. The speaker can't just stand up and say, I'm changing all the rules unilaterally, except for the fact that in this case, that's exactly what happened. Forget the rules. I'm decreeing these are the committees that will do an investigation. And I didn't realize until we went into the SCIF, which I'm authorized to do, and which under the rules, judiciary having jurisdiction, I should have a right to hear each one of those witnesses. I didn't know until we got in there. It turns out Chairman Schiff, each time a witness was about to begin to speak to the Intelligence Committee, the committees, he would instruct, now, this is unclassified, so if a question is asked that you think might end up revealing something classified, then you can just say you can't answer, might reveal classified information. Sounds to me like that was instruction. When the Republicans ask you a question you don't want to answer, just say, well, it may reveal classified information, and you don't have to answer their questions, except that then we find out that in the more recent depositions, the witnesses were actually instructed not to answer questions. Well, this metaphor of a grand jury totally breaks down. It doesn't apply. There's never been a grand jury where one grand juror could tell the witness, you don't have to answer these other grand jurors' questions. And we're going to put armed guards where people that are on the grand jury can't get in to hear the testimony if we don't want them to hear the testimony. Sure, they'll have to vote at some point, but we're going to put armed guards to keep the biggest part of the grand jury out of being able to see the witnesses, to see their countenance as they answered questions. It's why both in military courts martial that I participated in federal trials, in state trials, we have an aversion to having depositions. Yeah, you have a lot of depositions in civil trials, but in criminal trials, something as important as liberty, and I would submit a president being thrown out that was duly elected, is just as important. In such a case,
because we all know once you elect a president, you can't get rid of them no matter what. They've been duly elected. It's fact. I mean, we've never had presidents that were elected to be impeached before. Who the hell is Bill Clinton?
You get to ask the questions, you see the questions, you get to hear the answers, and you get to observe the witnesses. It's important. And yet, under orders of the Speaker and Chairman Schiff, this so-called comparative grand jury kept the huge majority out of being those hearings where we could hear and see for ourselves. And now we find out through the vote.
So Pelosi and Schiff made it to where they couldn't either see or hear for themselves. What an evil, dastardly woman. I hope she gets impeached.
Today, that, yeah, the Judiciary Committee is ultimately going to get this from the Intelligence Committee, but never in the history of this country have we had such gross unfairness that one party would put armed guards with guns to prevent the duly authorized people from being able to hear the witnesses and see them for themselves. And then, we hear from this resolution today, we're going to send you the depositions after we get through doctoring and looking at and editing the transcripts. We'll send you those so you have the evidence you need. That's not the kind of evidence that a coup should be based on. If we're going to have what they're trying to legalize as a coup, we ought to have a right to see each of those witnesses. And the only potential use for the deposition should be impeachment of those witnesses. Nothing.
Oh man, we got to stop the show. We have Trump's campaign manager in here. What's up, B? Still, how you doing? Is the re-election effort going strong? I hear you donated a whole bunch to him. You made sure his super chat was filled with coins and whatnot, and I was very proud to have encountered someone like yourself with such dedication to the current president of the United States. I'm glad you showed up. We're trying to stop this coup by the Democrats. These filthy, fraudulent pricks who all live in San Francisco, despite being elected all over the country, have decided they're going to have a coup to get rid of our duly elected president. Well, be still, you're working at the top of the echelon. You made sure to be the main person donating to him. I heard you gave $30,000 last week. I didn't even know that was possible. You found a way to just split it between you and your friends. Yeah, we're stopping these evil Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I know now that you're hanging out with the top members of government, you can spare a few more dollars. I really am grateful. Also, I hope you saw the O'Rourke documentary. That thing, man, that was a 8-9 hour effort. like between finding out that he's suspended late yesterday and then the actual making of it. But let's get back to the show. We got to watch some more of Louie, the greatest man to ever live.
Anything else, not for anything substantive. The president's attorney, unlike in 74 and 98, were not allowed to be there, even see and hear the witnesses. So the references to this being a star chamber are not inappropriate.
Wait a second, Be Still. You committed a great offense. First, you didn't find out that O'Rourke got out until today after I made a documentary about it. And you're interrupting Louie while he's speaking. Just get out. Just go. I don't even want to see you anymore. 2 offenses and like 1 comment. How is it even possible?
It's outrageous what's been going on for people who truly care about due process.
I care about due
regarding
process.
The procedures now, the Judiciary Committee must operate pursuant to the procedures imposed by the chairman of the Rules.
Yeah, I agree. He is a top fighter, Louie. Yeah, he's the strongest man up there. That's why I said he's the GOAT, the greatest of all time.
Committee. Well, previously, one of the oldest committees in the House of Representatives, the Judiciary
Committee,
in prior impeachments, made the rules.
They got fossils in their desk
for the impeachment hearing. We didn't have it dictated by the Rules Committee. No, because this is the Judiciary Committee. These are people that are supposed to have expertise in constitutional issues. So when you have the committee that has more expertise in constitutional issues, what did the majority do? We don't want the committee with the most expertise on constitutional issues.
B. Still, I'm actually glad you wrote with the comment you just put where you said these career politicians just rotate. Someone sent me an article. The source will remain anonymous. They said that if I ran for the House and won, you would vote against me for my re-election bid because you would try to stop me from becoming a career politician. So you would support me steadfastly for that first term, but after that, I'd be public enemy number 1. And I was so hurt to read such a thing.
Issues dealing with these constitutional issues, we want to put armed guards outside a hearing and have it in a secret compartmented information facility, and we're not going to let the other side call their own witnesses so we get a fair picture about what actually went on, and we're not even going to let them ask questions we don't want them to ask. We'll instruct the witnesses not to answer because, you see, they want it to be a one-sided, non-due process sham court. And it's about to push this country to a civil war if they were to get their wishes.
Oh my God! You already just said we're about to go to a civil war. Let me get my my baton and arrow. Make sure I have all my weaponry here. Okay, so I can take this pencil and I can sharpen it and I can make it to where I guess maybe it can poke someone's eye out. We gotta get our tools together because I didn't vote for Trump or Hillary, but all these people are gonna come after me in this civil war, and because I didn't vote for either one of them, I'm gonna get attacked from both sides. I'm gonna have a Trump supporter punch me in the face and a Hillary supporter kick me in the butt. Oh, this is gonna be terrible. Now, what am I gonna do? I gotta find that place to. You already said about the Democrats having the little secret place with all the information that they kept the Republicans out. I have to hide in there. Take refuge. These people feel themselves losing power. That's why they're panicking. LOL. Bronze Age tools. They want a civil war just to vent. They're dangerous. LOL. But that's why I stay away from most of them. That's why when I support the GOAT, I have to do it from here because if I go to Texas and they get pissed at me because they think I voted for Hillary, I get scared.
And if there's one thing I don't want to see in my lifetime, I don't want to ever have participation in. It's a civil war. Some historian, I don't remember who,
Some
said
historian.
guns are only involved in the last phase of a civil war. What's gone on here has not protected the Constitution. It's not protected the institutions. It's not protected this little experiment in self-government. No, what it has done has put it all at risk. Because what some people in this body don't seem to understand is when you set a precedent as dangerous as what we have been watching for the last 3 years, it won't be me, but there will be Republicans. If this isn't stopped, there will be Republicans that will take the precedent of what the Democrats have done here and use it against a Democratic president. Try to set him up and create a coup. Like I say, it won't be me, but that's the way.
No, he's not making threats. Be still. He just said it won't be him. Be still. Do I need to take that clip of Louie the Goat, the greatest of all time, saying it will not be me and have it replay until you agree that, until you concede that he said that it would not be him? Do I need to edit that clip right now so it can be corroborated? I mean, he was very loud and clear with his explanation. Oh, you know what? You know, it would be horrible if I took that clip of him saying it won't be me and I put it, because I can actually on my on iMovie, I can make it 3 times louder than what it was when it's posted on YouTube. So I can have him just screech, "It won't be me." Someone is going to, yeah, it won't be him. Someone will attack you and get pissed and be violent, but it won't be me.
History works. Then somebody sets a precedent, then eventually somebody, also not concerned about due process, is going to try to mimic that and go one further. In 1974, 1998, the committee procedures during those Clinton and Nixon impeachment processes, they included the ability of the president's counsel to attend all hearings, including those in executive session, question any and all witnesses called before the committee, submit written questions for additional testimony, and precise summaries of what he would propose to show, and respond to evidence received and testimony presented either orally or in writing as determined by the committee. The President's counsel could also review all evidence obtained in the course of the impeachment inquiry. Not only has the President's counsel not been allowed to do any of those things that have been done in the past to ensure due process and fairness, even the rest of this voting body that will have to vote on an impeachment were not allowed to see the witnesses, to hear the witnesses, to review the transcripts until after they're through working with the transcripts.
Ridiculous.
This resolution today bifurcates the impeachment, only allows President's counsel to participate.
What did you just say? Let's repeat that.
This resolution today bifurcates the.
What does that word? Hey, be still. I'm an ignorant black person. What does that word mean? Bifurcates? Man, we got to go to Google search engine. Let's make sure we know what this word means. I'm sure you probably know what it is, but it's just like Sky said, I'm ghetto and I can't speak in complete sentences. So I'm just going along with what he said of me. Bifurcates. I'd say B-I-F-U-R-C-A-T-E. Divide into 2 branches or forks. Oh, so it splits it in half. We learned a new word. Well, at least I learned a new word. I know. B. Still, you were in the top echelon of the intellect pool, but those dumb people like me, all we know how to do is say a couple of words that people might not have heard of before. So we get tripped up even worse because we're We're only halfway there.
The impeachment only allows President's counsel to participate in Judiciary Committee proceedings. It provides no ability to participate in the ongoing Intelligence Committee investigation. If we presume that the procedures the Rules Committee have dictated to us on high allow the President's counsel to participate in Judiciary Committee proceedings at all, they'll only have access to documents transmitted to the Judiciary Committee and not all the material obtained in the course of the Intelligence Committee's hearings. And I just happened to have House Resolution 803 from 1974 that involved, well, it was from Democratic Chairman Rodino.
He just happened to have it. He was just sitting at home one day. He was like, let me just bring a couple of papers. Oh, this convenient one is right here.
It's been done in the past, 74, 98. And under the rules that the Democrats passed earlier this year in January.
He's going to expose them. Let's hear this.
The rules say if a rule is not specific about a matter, then precedence is the rule.
If a rule is not specific about a matter, then precedence is the rule. I bet he went over to Pelosi and said, we got you. She went, oh, no.
That's the rule. And it's been ignored repeatedly.
They treat it like a side hoe.
So we vote today, basically rubber stamping the secret Star Chamber hearings, the one-sided questioning of the witnesses. Oh, we did hear today, Republicans had equal time to the Democrats. It's just that Democrats could ask whatever they wanted and get answers, and Republicans couldn't.
Oh, man, what a travesty. These filthy, disgusting Democrats got to ask whatever they wanted, and the Republicans had to sit there with their hands tied behind their back, hoping and praying that one of the elitist Democrats would be so kind as to ask some questions on their behalf, or ask a question that they also were thinking. He still says Washington, D.C. feels like a nursery. Yeah, thank God we have Louie to supervise these kids over there.
Impeachment in the past, when we've impeached federal judges before, came through our Judiciary Committee, very bipartisan, because even as recent as the last 10, 12 years, even Adam Schiff realized when you're going to remove a federal officer from a position who's duly placed in, you got to make sure you provide due process and you have buy-in on both sides. There was no buy-in today because even though there are some Republicans that are they're not.
Okay, B still says their meetings are like kindergarten show and tell time. That's the weirdest thing about it. And like, what are they even talking about? You know, if you're a Democrat, you think there's credible evidence that Trump committed a crime, blah, 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 blah. If you're a Republican, you go, okay, maybe he did bribe this person, but it's not illegal, or you have some other defense. So if you're on his side, you're defending him. If he's a D next to your name, you're opposing him. So it's like you listen to one of these people's speeches, you've heard them all basically. They're all saying the same thing, and you know they're saying it because of what their party is versus an actual ideology. Oh, let me tell you about how I think the president is innocent, or you're Republican. Oh yeah, well, so join the other 100 people saying that in the House.
Not big fans of the president, put it mildly. They realize this process is an outrage, and it is a threat to our little experiment in self-government. So an article comes out yesterday by Paul Sperry entitled "The Beltway's Whistleblower Furor Obsesses Over One Name." To my knowledge, I've not ever talked to this Paul Sperry with real clear investigations, but he brings out a name that's been bandied about on the internet. A lot of people speculating this guy was the whistleblower. Regardless of whether this guy's the whistleblower or not, it is important to look at.
You heard that. Regardless, doesn't even matter. Maybe he's the whistleblower, maybe not. But listen, this is the important thing that Louie's about to bring up. Let's hear it.
What's been going on with him. Just forget about the claim he's a whistleblower. Look at what he has been doing. And the more you find out, the more you realize, wow, President Trump should have revoked clearances for prior potential conspirators long before he did. But in the article, it mentions his 33-year-old, we already knew he was a male, that he worked for Vice President Biden, and this guy, he was held over from the Obama White House. And one of the things that President Obama was able to do,
the whistleblower was probably be still with a different name. Hey, you need to take this to the FBI or some other official. Don't confess that in here. They're gonna come looking for you.
The FBI, but especially in the White House, in the old executive office building for the vice president, they made much better certainty that everybody there was going to be loyal to President Obama and Vice President Biden. They did a magnificent job of that. So anybody that's held over, in fact, understand H.R. McMaster's, great Obama Democrat loyalist that was continuing to work in the Trump administration.
Now that's crazy. McMaster was one of Trump's boys, and now because he fell out with Trump, he was an Obama loyalist. Like, damn, you picked him. Must not have been that loyal.
I guess he didn't want people outed in front of people loyal to the president as being loyal to President Obama.
That's one theory.
But McMaster's also was a boss of this guy. He did work for Biden. He worked for CIA Director John Brennan.
Stand the CIA.
Brennan, as the article said, was a vocal critic of Trump who helped initiate the Russia collusion investigation of the Trump campaign during the 2016 election. Further, this guy left his National Security Council posting in the White House's West Wing in mid-2017. This guy was working in the White House. Love Brennan, love McMaster's, and he's in President Trump's White House. And part of the National Security Council. They get to see everything that concerns anything on foreign.
They get to see everything that concerns anything. Everything that concerns anything. Or anything that concerns everything. One of those two. So they can find out what color your blankets are, what your sock color is, you know, how many times you use the bathroom per day. All that is out there. They even know what B. Still's, I don't know, what his wife looks like or something.
Official speaking on the condition of anonymity and to discuss intelligence matters. Alas, this guy huddled for guidance with the staff of House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, including former colleagues, also held over from the Obama era, whom Schiff's office had recently recruited from the National Security Council.
Welcome aboard.
And this guy worked with a Democratic National Committee operative who dug up the dirt on the Trump campaign during the 2016 election, inviting her into the White House for meetings, former White House colleague said. The operative, Alexandra Chalupa, a Ukrainian American who supported Hillary Clinton, led an effort to link the Republican campaign to the Russian government. Quote, he knows her. He had her in the White House, said one former co-worker.
That's how you know I'm not the whistleblower, because when Hillary lost, I smiled. I was like, ha. So that's how they didn't bother to open a file on the possibility of it being me. Now, in the case of B. Still, when he found out that Hillary was defeated, he went. But ever since then, he's joined the winning team, and he's now working as Trump's campaign manager. He's helping to make America great, with 76% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, 40% homeless, but still working, but still homeless. I mean, it's a terrific economy. You know, everyone's prospering. Now, be still, we know your voting record. We know you supported Romney in the 2012 election, and then you were hoping he would run again, and he didn't. So you backed Hillary, and then you decided to swap over to Trump and join the winning team. Oh yeah, I know, but they like to say it isn't. So that's why I make jokes like that.
Documents confirm the DNC opposition researcher attended at least one White House meeting with this guy in November of 2015. She visited the White House with a number of Ukrainian officials lobbying the Obama administration for aid to Ukraine. And that's the aid we know. We've seen, heard former Vice President Biden bragging that
Biden likes to brag about a lot of things. He was over saying, I'm the most qualified person to run. I'm the most qualified person to be president. According to who? If you were so qualified, why did you get smashed the other two times you ran? Like, he did terribly in '88, where, well, I think he got out before where they even had any voting, and then he lost the 2008 election, or primary in Iowa, the first state. He was in, I think, 6th or 7th or 8th place. It was horrible. So if we get a repeat of history, it'll be really funny. Counting quarters is to survive. Oh, counting the quarters. Oh, well, I didn't mean to deprive you of any.
Across the Potomac. You know, normally the New York Times and Washington Post, they can't wait to out a whistleblower.
They got
can't
excited.
Wait. Don't mind seeing.
Dude, I'm imagining like the New York Times and Washington Post that just have orgasms. Like, oh, that whistleblower. I'm going to reveal him. I'm going to put him out.
Them destroyed. But you look at a real whistleblower, not a fake one like we have here, a real whistleblower with direct information like Adam Lovinger, who working in the Defense Department. I didn't know that this scheme went that far. But Lovinger is supposed to investigate improper payments by the Defense Department, and he saw hundreds.
Man, be still. You know how this goes. If you're not on their team, they discredit you. Why do you think they all hated Snowden? Because they were all part of the surveillance state. So they just go around and say, okay, well, he's not one of the real people. He needs to be protected. Same thing with Assange. Same thing with Chelsea Manning. We can go down the list. As long as you're not on their team, you are fake, or you're not real, or you're some other thing. That's why I did the video about Harris, where she was like, oh, we have to protect whistleblowers. You didn't say anything about the other ones I just mentioned. So they don't care, really.
Court and get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign.
Ooh, what do I spy
Phenomenal.
With my little eye?
The Defense Department's paying a guy to help set up the Trump campaign before President Trump was ever elected. But so they could get a warrant to spy on the campaign. It's incredible.
Wait, be still. What did you think was funny? You said, I just wanted to make sure I know what you're talking about.
Says Trump supporters blame the conspiracy of silence on a corrupt and biased media trying to protect the whistleblower from due scrutiny about his political motives. They also complain Democrats have falsely claimed that exposing his identity would violate whistleblower protections, even though the relevant statute provides limited, not blanket, anonymity and doesn't cover press disclosures. His Democrat attorneys, meanwhile, have warned that outing him would put him and his family at risk of harm, although the government security personnel have been assigned to protect him.
I mean, that did kind of happen with Christine Blasey Ford, where whether you think she's telling the truth or not, she still has people screwing with her over the Kavanaugh thing, where she's moved out of her house. And so, like that's not really a crazy thought that there are people who, not saying it's all of them or it's most of them, but are crazy enough to go around getting pissed off over this stuff to where they're trying to kill someone. He would be by the security they gave him. No, they give him a big hug. He would be lauded for being the greatest congressman of all time.
Where people end up dead in the morgue. I'm not saying they caused it. I'm just saying if you're worried about outing some incident, somebody, President Trump's not the one you need to worry about. Flight said they're hiding him. They're hiding him because of his political bias. A CIA officer specializing in Russia and Ukraine, this person was detailed over to the National Security Council from the agency, being the CIA, in the summer of 2015, working under Susan Rice, President Obama's national security advisor. He also worked closely with the former vice president. Let's see, that's the same Susan Rice, according to a book in recent few years. According to that book, it reported that Secretary Clinton called her husband and said, they're wanting me to go out there and say this attack in Benghazi was all about a video. And the advice was...
Somebody saw a YouTube video and decided to blow up a U.S. embassy. They were like, oh. They hit the play button, just the hate boner exploded. Okay, a hug around the neck. Now they give him a hug around just a warm embrace. Trump already tried to label the whistleblower a spy and joked about killing him. Trump wasn't playing. That's why I said it's really dangerous when you're like directly screwing with, when you're not a famous person like a senator or like some celebrity who actually can afford security, like a big time musician or actor. You do face risks when you mess with certain people or if you seem like you're in the way of something.
And I love hearing people on the other side say, oh, you investigated Benghazi for so long, you had nothing. Yes, that's because the Obama administration wouldn't produce anything that we asked for, the important things we asked for. They covered things up. Same on Fast and Furious. And we didn't have a speaker on the Republican side that would allow us to go to court and get those things released. So the more important things that got released.
See, this is actually something on a serious note. I really wish he would go more into detail about that. What particular things were hidden from Republicans when they were looking into Benghazi year after year? What, specifically name instances of the Obama administration saying, hey, you want these papers so you can have your little investigation? Screw you. I'd love to hear more about that, just so we can have some kind of first-hand record instead of having to trying to figure out what's going on or what happened. B. Still says Trump supporters would target the whistleblower. He would come to a stoplight and then a MAGA zombie Trump supporter and empty the entire clip of his AR-15 to the whistleblower's car. Yeah, but he would only be emptying it so he could give the bullets to the whistleblower so he could protect himself, because Trump supporters are all upstanding citizens who've never committed any kind of crimes, and they're all they're nonviolent people. They're like little civil rights leaders.
Were a result of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton's folks going to court, get a court order to get things produced. But still, there was so much that was not produced. We don't know all the facts.
You know what? You just made a good point, B. Still, I bet those Trump supporters, if they have wives, they'll invite the whistleblower over so their wife can make them some Swiss cheese. It's a good point.
Is it? Because he reported to our Republican conference after Benghazi, about 6 months after. Look, guys, some of you have asked me, isn't there somebody at Walter Reed that was injured? We keep hearing rumors. And Mike said, no, I can tell you, there is no one who was injured at Benghazi that's at Walter Reed. I couldn't sit still anymore. It was on one of my trips to Walter Reed. I met such a person. He was on the roof with Tyrone Wood and the other heroes. He had much of his leg blown off, and I'd met him, and I honored his request for anonymity being out there. But I couldn't sit there and listen to the Republican chairman of intelligence perpetrating what he thought was true, but was not, and I knew it wasn't. I said, that's not true. He got red-faced, said, that is true. And I said, no, I had lunch with one yesterday. He said, that's not true. And he told me later.
All right, we are into the 33rd minute of this 51-minute speech. You said it feels like story time. Let's see, we've had a Benghazi recap, a recap of meeting a soldier he kept the anonymity of, a rundown of the affiliation that whoever the hell had with Susan Rice. So there's been at least one story every 10 minutes, and we're still not even. we got a little bit ways further to go. I just feel like I just keep feeling this feeling, whatever Trump speaks or Louie speaks or hearing Grandpa talk. Well, it makes sense. I mean, you've been around these people, so of course you'd get they're like elderly father figures for you. Is that what you're trying to say? I'm sure they'd be very flattered to hear that.
The meeting, I've talked to our intelligence people, and they tell me that the guy you must have seen, he's not at Walter Reed. He comes there for physical therapy. And I said, no, I can tell you the building number and where his apartment is, and it adjoins the physical therapy. It is right there on Walter Reed. But anyway, he didn't believe it. And I had texted.
What happened here? Oh, no.
And didn't hear from him for a couple of weeks. And he later emailed back that,
You mean back in his day? He's been talking about some fairly contemporary stuff, sir. Besides, I bet you know what? Be still. I bet if I gave you the link to this video and he was sitting in a rocking chair, you'd be so quick to hit the like button. You love that story time.
Strangest thing happened. I had the most painful surgery on my leg. He had numerous surgeries, but this was the most painful since half of it got blown off on that rooftop in Benghazi. And he said, but that painful, that they medicated me because of all the pain. And that night, in the middle of the night, these guys show up at our apartment there, and they moved my wife, my kids, all of us immediately off the hospital property. It doesn't make sense. Well, it made sense to me because we had intelligence people that were covering up the lie that they had told to the chairman of Intel, because he was a Republican chair. I bet they don't lie like that to Adam Schiff. Anyway, federal records, according to the article, showed that Biden's office invited this guy to an October 2016 state luncheon. The vice president hosted for Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi. Other invited guests included Brennan, as well as then FBI Director James Comey, then National Intelligence Director James Clapper.
Man, this was like a gathering of all the special intelligence sleazebags, man. They all just gather, just come together. Yeah, there's Comey, and there's Clapper, and there's Brennan, and there's Biden, and there's Obama. Let's all embrace and talk about the surveillance state and why the Patriot Act is more delicious to us than sliced bread.
As point man for Ukraine. He was a Yale graduate, speaks Russian, Ukrainian, as well as Arabic. He'd been assigned to the NSC by Brennan. He was held over into the Trump administration, headed
Special ed intelligence. Come on, don't be so hateful. All these people went to Ivy League schools after all. They must have some basic level of intellect.
office to temporarily fill a vacancy, said a former White House official, where he saw everything, read everything. The official added that soon became clear among NSC staff that this guy opposed the new Republican president's foreign policies. Quote, my recollection of this guy is that he was very smart, very passionate, particularly about Ukraine and Russia. That was his thing, Ukraine. He didn't exactly hide his passion with respect to what he thought was the right.
I still can't get over like a little autobiographical thing here. When I first got into following politics regularly, one of the first, or I think actually the first geopolitical thing to happen after that was the annexation of Ukraine from Russia. And I didn't think of it as a big deal because I didn't even know what Ukraine, anything about it besides that. And it's just to think about kind of like not paying attention to it back then. And now it's at the center of this huge scandal that, some people think actually could get Trump out of office, which I doubt. But, it's just this thing of, oh, this country from several years ago that I didn't pay any attention to all this time is now relevant again out of the blue.
The Putin-fired Comey narrative, according to the research dossier making the rounds in Congress. So, anyway, it's a mess. Now, one of the things about whistleblower protections, though, is if you were to be prosecuted for committing a crime, then the whistleblower status could be used to help hold off potential prosecution. It's my understanding that it would not likely win the day, but it could delay prosecution. So, say hypothetically, you were
prosecution, go away, put me in jail another day. That's what that reminded me of. It could perhaps delay it, and then the prosecution fades away and it comes back like a week later.
Worked for somebody like Brennan, or say hypothetically you work for somebody like McMaster's and Brennan, and you help come up with a conspiracy to oust a duly elected sitting president.
Man, if he doesn't stop saying that.
By alleging some conspiracy with Russia, and you found out that the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney assigned to investigate the origins of the Russia hoax were closing in on participants of your conspiracy. Well, if you had a really smart lawyer, he might just tell you, if you could get a whistleblower status, if they start closing in on you, then we can start filing motions to keep you out of that prosecution because you're a whistleblower, you're in a protected status. It shouldn't prevent the ultimate prosecution, but it could delay things for a while. So it could make sense if you're a co-conspirator in trying to bring down a duly elected president that you might want that whistleblower status. But the problem that is, and this is a problem for a tainted inspector general who would protect such a whistleblower, because if you're complaining, it has to be to get that status somebody in your chain of command, and the president was not in he's not in the whistleblower's chain of command, because that's outside of his intelligence, the CIA. So it has to be within that.
Damn, I'm still trying to figure out. I remember the House, they're supposed to only be able to give 5-minute speeches. And this is at least the fifth speech I've seen him give that is like a major address. I don't even know how the hell they do that. They're supposed to have the general speeches where they talk for 5 minutes, and then there's over 400 members, and it goes on and on and on. I've never seen even Pelosi and what's the other one, McCarthy, the top Democrat and Republican in the House, ever sit up there and give a speech that was this long. Duly elected president just makes no people want to elect Trump regardless of what to defend Trump regardless of what he does. Well, I mean, the thing is, when we only had the Johnson impeachment, so the president after Lincoln, you could make the argument, okay, well, that was someone who came into power because of unforeseen circumstances. But because it happened to Clinton, who was also duly elected, it doesn't really have meaning anymore. And it's really creepy because that means it had meaning for over 100 years. But like now it doesn't, because we already did it with someone that was elected.
Like he has become, to come before him and say, Captain, I heard that somebody else heard something that was said, you throw him out of the office. I'm not going to be running a gossip column here. If somebody knows something directly, send them to me.
Somebody said
but don't you come in here being a gossip monger. Well, now he's become the gossip monger. Well, I heard that somebody else heard that they heard the president say. And I just come back to this as someone who had to sit and listen and evaluate evidence and make life and death decisions in a courtroom. You analyze, what kind of person is this before me as a witness? And if you have a witness before you that is willing to try to destroy and remove a president from office who was duly elected under our Constitution.
Oh, he said that phrase in an interview with, I think it's OAN. I actually be still, before he put this up yesterday on his channel, which I have linked in mine, because I gotta promote the greatest congressman of all time. I was gonna do all these little clips that he had put out throughout the week. It was gonna be like lagging behind Louie or something, but I decided I was just gonna focus on this major historic address that he's giving.
And they're now willing to use second, third, fourth hand gossip. It tells you they are not the great person that they once were. They are not the patriot they once were. They're nothing but gossip mongers. And it should, if you're going to be a fair arbiter of truth and justice, it should dramatically diminish your evaluation and analysis of what they have to say. This is not a classy person. This is a gossip monger. And that's what William Taylor became for the Intelligence Committee.
Be still, if you meet a woman and she claims something to you, but she says her friend has heard that this other person said, she is right, a gossip monger. I think Louie would shoot that guy himself and then say, when the police show up to arrest him, he was shot by my gun, but it wasn't me. It probably wasn't him. You know what it is? The guy's probably a gun control supporter, and the firearm got so angry it fired itself at him. So he likely would be innocent. It would just unfortunately have been his weapon that got pissed. So it traces back to him.
And that's what Vindman became. And some have said, "Oh, gee, Lieutenant
gee.
Colonel Vindman, he's the ultimate American. He even came in uniform." Well, I was trained. If you're going to say bad things about someone in your chain of command, including the commander in chief, because a lot of us were not happy with President Carter when I was in at Fort Benning, but we all knew you can't say anything negative about President Carter, and especially not in uniform. Doesn't matter if it's true. You can't do it. He comes in parading in his uniform to try to take down a sitting president. And he uses gossip to do that, And we also have to wonder, okay, so
Sir, I have been waiting for you all stream. I sent you the link when it started. I'm so disappointed. I might just end it right now. I'm so saddened. I mean, it's like, how could you do this to me? But what a sick thing. I gotta close Discord now too, because that thing's gonna go off. What a horrendous act. I've been sitting there. You realize that B Still has had to write a bunch of stuff and be the only person here that's been writing, and because you decided to not show up to something that you pledged you would attend. How could you do this? But you know what? I bet what you were actually doing is going around and claiming things about people like any old gossip monger. Yeah, that's what I thought too, B Still. High five. We have our suspicions.
whistleblower number one, this great patriot, we're told, who's not, is gossip monger. Where did he get that information since he didn't get it firsthand? He was not allowed to receive information about those telephone calls the president made to a leader of another country. So somebody violated the law by telling him.
Who was it?
We don't know who that was, but whoever it was, Vindman or anybody else, there's a good chance they committed a crime.
Ooh.
And that crime and all of the surrounding information about their crime should be admissible in helping impeach and analyze that witness's testimony.
They're going to jail.
So you ought to be able to pursue it. But we're told when Republicans were asking Colonel Vindman, who you told about this, who did you transfer information to? They were shut down by the chairman. Well, that tells you the chairman must know what the answers were, and he didn't want the Republicans to have them.
Oh my God.
And it sounds to me like there's a chance he committed a crime, and that was being covered up. Because otherwise, if you want due process, if you want a fair process, if you want justice, then we've got to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, so we can make a fair determination. And every person elected as a member of Congress is going to have a right to vote on that impeachment if it ever comes up. And we have a right to hear the witnesses. Anything else is a sham. And by the way, as Colonel Vindman, turns out, it's been published, he went to the stenographers, and we'd heard previously from the president there were 4 stenographers who take down everything. Well, I've used court reporters my whole adult life, and they miss a word time to time, and I've had to fix transcripts where they miss something. We have that problem here. They're amazing. These stenographers are absolutely incredible. But they miss a word time to time. But they've got 4. And apparently we're told the reason is they don't want to tape it, so no foreign leader has to worry about ever hearing his own voice say things that he said in a private conversation with the President of the United States. So they have 4 stenographers, 4, so that they make sure they get exactly what was said. And this guy, Vindman, goes to the
because we all know 4 people could never slip up.
Stenographers and tells them, I want to get these words inserted in the transcript. Burisma, the name of the gas company they're trying to.
Well, Kevin, of course it's lovely. This is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. This is the most stupendous member of Congress that has ever lived. So when you hear what he says, you're instantly dazzled. And when you hear his voice, you instantly fall in love. Well, if you're a female, if you're a guy, you sit there in admiration and go, wow, this is nice to listen to. Oh.
Go after President Trump and say he demanded information on them. Well, apparently, none of the stenographers heard that.
Oh.
It sounds like not only is he a potential criminal for leaking information and people weren't supposed to get it, but there's also potential there that this is part that, when you go to prove up a conspiracy in federal court, you have to prove not only that you plotted, but there was an overt act. And his overt act of going to stenographers and trying to get words embedded into the transcript that the president did.
Kevin, I actually don't know his record on international issues. I do know that he voted to, and again, you might say something I might not have heard of before. I know he voted not to condemn Trump over the Syria withdrawal, which was something I favored because, we want to get out of Syria too. We just don't want to do it right now or next year or the year after that. So you can tell me what specific conflicts he supported.
And say could potentially be such an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. So there's a lot we don't know here, but this process has the possibility to bring this nation's constitutional republic to the brink of the end. On our watch,
going to be canceled.
This ought to be a bipartisan thing. You can hate a president, you can disagree with them, but let's make sure that we have due process so we don't get drug into a third world status. We know no country lasts forever. No country ever will. But if we're going to perpetuate this any further, we have got to have some bipartisan concern for justice, for due process, for making sure that all of the protections to protect against a star chamber type thing are not what we use here. And unfortunately, that's what we've been seeing for nearly 3 years. One of the things I was taught in law school, what separates us is we don't just take somebody and try to find a crime. That's unconstitutional.
That's what separates us. We don't just take somebody and try to find a crime, because that's unconstitutional.
A crime that you find was committed, and then you try to find out who probably committed. When you get probable cause, you can get them indicted, then you can have a trial. What we have seen clearly is that over 3 years ago, some people in justice, FBI, intelligence, maybe defense, maybe somebody in the White House, they decided, here's Donald J. Trump. Let's find a crime, whether he committed it or not, that we can wrap around his throat. And that's what we've been watching happen. They found.
Okay, B Still says these lovely police officers never make up crime, and they always find out who did it by virtue of being fair and judicious. That's a really nice compliment to make. And then he puts hashtag Blue Lives Matter.
Somebody now, let's find a crime that we can allege. The problem with this one about the quid pro quo, demanding something, they're going to have to prosecute Vice President Joe Biden. They're going to have to prosecute some U.S. senators who have sent letters that have said, gee, if you don't do this or that, we're going to cut off funding to you. Whoa. Joe Biden bragged about it. I told him, you want this $1 billion, you better fire that prosecutor. They're going to have to prosecute all of those people before they go after President Trump, and he didn't do anything nearly like he was accused of. And there's nothing wrong with a president saying to a foreign leader, your country apparently was involved in a conspiracy to affect our election. Could you help us out by giving us information about what happened? We just need to know. Nothing wrong with that. And you look at the transcript, not amended by somebody that was trying to set up the president, but by 4 stenographers that were intent on having everything in there that was said. And you see, there was nothing wrong with this phone call. No, what was wrong was the process of trying to commit a coup d'etat and take out a duly elected president.
Here we go with that phrase.
It's time we wake up. We do what's right for this country. And with that, I yield back.
And that was that historic speech by the greatest representative that ever lived. He was so outraged over the buffoonery that took place with these Democrats against this duly elected president. I mean, I can't believe that these people would even do this to someone who was able to win a presidential election with 3 million less votes. That's called an accomplishment. Can't believe they would do this to someone that ran on being anti-war and then kept all 7 of the wars of his predecessor going. That's called respect and honor. Are there any further comments? I was thinking of maybe I can do another one of his. Not something this long, but there's another I can probably stick in here. I mean, this is the GOAT. Yeah, we got to make sure we cover his stuff. All right, I'll take. What do I do? This one's a minute. That one's 5 minutes. I'll take this one. The Gohmert questions witnesses.
And personally, I can't imagine anybody considering Congresswoman Dingell a troublemaker. But anyway, I'm curious, and we do appreciate your work, Inspector General. You mentioned that somebody's in jail today. Could you tell us a little more about the facts of the case? I think it's helpful for people out there that may be tempted to act similarly.
This was a situation of a supervisor.
Hey, is that O'Rourke? Oh no, I'm about to say I thought that was O'Rourke. That the same little grovelly thing to it. Oh, wow. What the hell?
Who was making untoward advances, physical advances on another employee while they were in a remote location, that included laying on top of her at one point. This was not this was totally inappropriate in every way,
I would say.
Very, very inappropriate.
And hopefully people will get the message. That's just unbelievable to me that could even happen. I'm hopeful that having superiors closer to the people that are out there doing the work may also help stem the tide of those type activities. And we noted previously 99% of all the land that the BLM controls is west of the Mississippi. And I'm sure there are a lot of people that are quite comfortable here in Washington that are not looking forward to going to Grand Junction. I think it's great. And my understanding is there will actually be supervisors closer to the people with whom they're working. Is that correct, Secretary Combs?
Yes, sir. And in fact, 2 things are important. When the new policy bulletin was issued in 2018, it said a person can complain to any supervisor anywhere. Because of the remoteness issue, you can't be trying to address your supervisor who may or may not be the bad person. And so that was an important change. And I would say, secondly, with the move west of the Bureau of Land Management staff, getting decision makers out in the field where they can take hold of things immediately is obviously desirable, and it does make a difference. And from that perspective, I work with the field special assistants. There are 12 of those, and so I had a conversation with them.
I said something on it. So he talks for another whole I think she actually speaks for the remainder of this. Wow, that's crazy.
Resources
I
people
came to see the
yesterday from
congressman,
3 to
not
4, and I
some
talked to them from 4 to 5. And
broad.
I thanked them for all of their work. And I said, you're leaders in your region, and you represent all the bureaus. And I said,
Yes,
I
we have to
expect you
swallow our
all to help
vegetables and listen to
continue
her.
making this effort to go forward. And so they shared with me that they have been having, they have executive councils in the region made up of all the leadership of all of the bureaus in the particular region, and they meet regularly. And I said that I would be sending them some of the materials that we have. I think this group of individuals, they're all career, except for 2, they're all career individuals, and they truly embrace and understand their role as collaborating between bureaus. They're not representing a bureau, they're representing the Department of the Interior, and it is their job, absolutely, to effectuate these policies that are so important. I would say on a personal basis, this makes a big difference to me. I launched a women's empowerment group in 2015 after I left state service. I've got a 4-year-old granddaughter, and I am not letting anybody get in my granddaughter's way. And so I will just give fair warning. But this is important, and chairing this council has been both a privilege and a pleasure. And so I welcome input, I welcome advice, because there is nothing more important than we can do to create a respectful workplace where people feel valued and that they are heard. If they speak, we listen.
Well, I appreciate that. And you've looked at Ms. Feldblum a few times as you spoke. So I'm sure you got a great deal from her study, her report. And one of those things in her report was that strong leadership is identified as a key factor in effectively addressing harassment in the workplace. How are the current leaders at Department of Interior demonstrating their commitment towards strong leadership?
Well, Secretary Bernhardt also has a daughter, and he and I have chatted about, women, and he has given me all the budget that I needed for this effort.
Policy on women.
Resources. He's issued messages.
Man, I can't believe this woman would even dare to be in the presence of the greatest of the Gohmert the GOAT.
And he's a longtime hand at the department.
It's really a travesty.
Sort of WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. He's very.
I'm glad this is over in like 10 seconds.
Thank you very much. My time's expired.
Good. Okay, so just a little bit of a little side note here. It is 7 a.m. I've been up without sleep since 12 yesterday, 12 p.m. So the beginning of the afternoon. I got a person I'm supposed to speak to a little bit after this. Then I got to stream later today. I appreciate Be Still for the donation. Like I said, I do this because I find the topics engaging, and I appreciate those who show up, and I attempt to still put stuff out regularly. And what might have been like a side effect of me being kind of tired is because I wanted to put out the O'Rourke thing as quickly as I could because of the attention that his ending was going to get. So I can't wait to sleep after the next few. That was like 2 hours, 3 hours at 4. I don't know, but yeah, thank you for watching. And I'll see you later. I'll see you later at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, I appreciate it. Be still. See you later. Have a good day. And hit the damn like button. Yeah, you know it. See you later.